Do you love reading on the go but hate carrying around bulky e-readers? Meet the Boox Palma 2, a pocket-sized e-ink e-reader that promises the portability and flexibility of a phone without the distractions. But is it worth $280? Let's find out. On first glance, the Boox Palma 2 looks almost identical to the first generation Palma. It got the same thick bezels around the screen, the same heavily rounded sides, and the same rough textured back cover, which provides a secure grip. With a weight of 170 grams, the Palma 2 generally lies very well in the hand. And unlike traditional e-readers that often require a bag or a larger pocket, the Palma 2 easily slips into your jeans pocket, making it the ideal travel companion. It doesn't have dedicated page turn buttons on the front like some e-readers, but there's a volume rocker on the right side that can double as page turn buttons. The rounded design might not be as sleek as on a modern smartphone, but it's practical, easy to locate by touch, and even usable with gloves. And you can configure the volume buttons in the settings for specific apps. For example, you can use them as page turn buttons in your preferred reading app. This feature works with most apps, though not all. The ability to use the Kindle app with the volume rocker adds significant reading comfort since the buttons are also conveniently positioned just below the power button. I'm very happy Boox kept this thoughtful design from the first generation Palma on the second Palma as well. Speaking of the power button, it now includes a fingerprint reader, adding an additional layer of convenience for everyday use. On the other side, there's a smart button, and that one can be customized with short presses, long presses, and double-click actions. By default, it refreshes the screen with a single click, which can be handy in certain situations. However, I do miss an option to use it to toggle the flashlight on the back, something that would have been practical for a portable device like this. The phone has two speakers, one on the bottom, and one is essentially an earpiece speaker, but right now they don't function as stereo speakers. So playing back audio only outputs sound through the bottom speaker, which is noticeably louder than the one on the Boox Palma 1. It also has two microphones, one on the bottom and one on the top, probably for noise cancellation, which adds to the feeling that this could totally be a phone as well. But it isn't, because it's missing cellular connectivity, same as the first Palma, which is really a shame because it would instantly transform it into a do-it-all portable e-ink device many are looking for. The back of the device features a 16 megapixels camera, and this time there is an actual camera app included, not just the document scanning app of the Palma 1. However, the camera is only useful for close-up shots at the moment. I couldn't get it to focus on anything else. Even side-loaded camera apps didn't fix that issue, leading me to wonder if it was intentional to focus on document scanning. Hopefully future software updates will improve this, as the camera on the Palma 1 didn't have this limitation. With 128 gigs of internal storage, of which around 96 gigs are usable, and the microSD card slot, the Palma 2 offers plenty of space for anyone really. The reason why there is so much space of the internal storage already occupied is the switch to Android 13. It needs 6 gigs more storage than Android 11 on the first Palma. Even though it's still not the latest version, the newer Android version definitely makes the Palma 2 more future-proof for app compatibility in the years to come. What's also worth pointing out is the Android security patch version of October 2024, because after all, device security matters a lot when you can connect to the internet and install apps. You can install apps via Google Play or sideload APK files, offering a lot of flexibility for which apps you want to use. With the Snapdragon 690 octa-core CPU, the Palma 2 is fast enough for typical e-ink tasks. So as it's the case most of the time for Android e-ink devices, the screen is the limiting factor here. But of course, that's the main appeal for many people, because it's not the same hectic, instant feedback, dopamine-inducing user experience as on a typical LCD display. With 6 gigs of RAM, the Palma 2 is also well equipped for running more demanding apps without any issues. When it comes to the user interface, Boox did an excellent job in adapting the e-ink optimized system of larger Boox devices to the smaller and narrower screen of the Palma 2. With Android 13, it generally also looks a bit more refined now. Everything is still made with high contrast in mind, so you won't find a lot of grayscale elements out of the box. And icons, margins, and borders look slightly better balanced and a bit more modern overall. Compared to competitors like the Bigme Highbreak, the Palma 2's UI feels much more polished and intuitive. To run Android apps on the inherently slow e-ink screen smoothly, there are 4 different e-ink modes available that range from HD, which is slow but high quality, to ultra fast, which is, well, fast but renders contents with lower quality. ultra-fast mode, which uses Boox Super Refresh technology, speeds up refresh rates for smoother scrolling, and even supports video playback, though it's slower than an LCD of course. But because you might need to tinker with those ink modes a bit to make every app run without any problems, there's a bit of a learning curve to the Boox Palma 2. It takes a bit of time getting the hang of these modes and other ink settings, but once you do, it's easy to operate. But to be fair, most apps run without any issues out of the box, and for many apps, there's no need to adapt anything. There is a dedicated reading app pre-installed, which offers a lot of useful features out of the box. But I think one of the main appeals of Android e-ink devices in general, and the Boox Palma 2 especially, is the option to install other reading apps as well. You can install apps like Kindle, Kobo, or get the Libby app directly from the Google Play Store. And of course, a lot of other apps are available for Android as well. That really gives a lot of flexibility and doesn't create this lock-in effect you typically have with many other e-reader brands, with some more than with others of course. But generally, the option to install other reading apps helps a lot to customize the device to your reading habits instead of having it the other way around. But as I said, keep in mind that the first few steps with the Palma 2 might be a bit more difficult than with other e-readers because that flexibility comes at the cost of ease of use. Boox has a data privacy policy in place in which they state that they adhere to the GDPR, which is the data privacy protection law in the EU. What I'd like to see in addition to that is an option to opt out of any tracking because, same as with other Boox devices, the Palma 2 also connects to Boox servers occasionally, even when not using any Boox services actively. The ink display itself has a rather unusual 2:1 aspect ratio, but I'd say it's a good compromise to make the Palma 2 pocket-friendly while still maintaining a good amount of screen estate. The 2:1 aspect ratio of the 6.13-inch screen is narrower than the 4:3 aspect ratio of a 6-inch Kindle, and this results in about 13% less screen estate, which is most noticeable inside ebooks. Because the screen isn't as wide, the lines are just shorter. That takes a bit of time getting used to at first, but after a short while it didn't bother me anymore. The 300 ppi e-ink Carta 1200 technology provides excellent contrast levels, making readability really easy, both with and without ambient light, because there's a built-in front LED, which means that the screen can be lit by LEDs, which are hidden inside the bezel. The light is then distributed through a light carrier film across the screen. Uniformity could be a bit better though, with a slightly noticeable brightness gradient, but thanks to a tall aspect ratio, it's a bit less distracting than on traditional e-readers. The maximum screen brightness isn't as high as on the first Palma, but with 200 nits still incredibly bright. The Palma 1 screen managed to get as bright as 380 nits, which in all honesty was insane and unnecessary for e-ink. So 200 nits is more than sufficient, and in most situations you likely won't need even that level. The lowest possible setting gets down to 0.35 nits, which is dim enough to comfortably read in the dark. And especially for reading at night, the optionally available warm orange color temperature is great for a more soothing experience. Both the brightness and color temperature can also be adapted automatically thanks to the light sensor. One thing worth pointing out is the glow of the bezel around the screen when using the front LED on the white version of the Palma 2. My black Palma 1 doesn't have that glow, and I suspect the black version of the Palma 2 also doesn't have it. So if that's something you might find distracting, keep it in mind when ordering one. Besides the front LED brightness, one other noticeable change compared to the first Palma is the better light diffusion of the display. The Palma 2's display glass is a bit less reflective, resulting in a better reading experience. However, there is a trade-off that comes with that improvement. The screen isn't as scratch resistant as before. Since this is a device typically carried around in your pocket, I recommend getting a screen protector because of that. The optionally available flip cover might also be a smart investment to protect the display a bit better. Ghosting, which is when faint traces of the previous contents on the screen are still visible, can be an issue on the Boox Palma 2. When simply reading text, it's not really noticeable, but for more image-rich content or when using one of the faster refresh modes, it's more obvious. With a bit of tinkering, it can be reduced, but there's only so much you can do with the ink screen. And last but not least, let's talk about battery life. The 3950 mAh battery provides decent runtimes. When using the Kindle app and reading with the page turn interval 15 seconds and the front LEDs turned off, the battery drains at around 3% per hour, resulting in a good runtime of up to 33 hours on one charge. With the frontlet set to 15 nits brightness, the runtime decreases, but with roughly 25 hours is still decent. Using the display with the maximum brightness, the runtime goes down to 23 hours, which is still good, especially considering the 200 nits setting is needed most of the time. Video playback drains the battery faster and results in a total runtime of around 7 hours with the frontlets on maximum brightness. But that's not a typical use case for an e-reader and just gives us a good idea of how quickly the battery can be drained. In short, battery life varies depending on which apps you're running, what ink modes you're using, and how bright the frontlet is. Alright, let's wrap things up. The Boox Palma 2 not only stands out as one of the most portable, but also one of the most capable e-readers in the 6-inch segment. With its upgrade to Android 13, it's more future-proof for app compatibility in the years ahead. But at the end of the day, it's essentially only a careful update of the first generation Palma, so my two main complaints remain. It's still pretty expensive, and it lacks a SIM card. At around $280 or 300 euros, it's not a cheap device. Alternatives like the Boox Go 6 offer similar features, even better PDF functionality at almost half the price. If the Palma 2 could double as a phone, the price point would be easier to swallow, and I bet many people would use it as the daily driver. That said, the Palma still offers a unique form factor, specs and feature set. And looking at it this way doesn't make it all that surprising that the Palma 1 found a large enough audience that even MKBHD reviewed it not too long ago. Its ultra-portable design, thoughtful button placement, well-executed UI for the smaller screen, and powerful hardware make for a compelling package and make the Palma 2 an interesting choice if you love to read on the go and appreciate the ultra space-saving build. One small downside in everyday use is the less scratch-resistant screen. I definitely recommend investing in a screen protector to improve the device's longevity. Ultimately, the Boox Palma 2 is for readers who value portability and flexibility over ease of use or price. If that sounds like you, it's a solid choice. That's it. Like and subscribe if you found this review helpful. Thanks for your time watching and see you on the next one.